So thanks for joining me today. Today we have Sarah Randolph, who is the Outreach and Communications Director from Alabama Audubon. How are you, Sarah?
Hey, I'm great. How are you, Jen?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining me. Um, I wanted to learn a little bit about Alabama Audubon. So when were you guys established and what inspired its creation?
Yeah, as you mentioned, my name's Sarah Randolph and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I do all the outreach and communications here at Alabama Audubon. Um, we've been saying we were established in 1946 as the Birmingham Audubon Society, but I've recently uncovered for our 75th anniversary this year that we actually had an earlier chapter that was founded in the 1920s, and the
Oh,
Birmingham
wow.
Historical Society reached out, and we've been talking back and forth with them a lot. And apparently George Ward, whose name a lot of people will probably recognize in Birmingham, he is a former mayor and played a lot of roles in this town, but apparently he founded an organization called Birmingham Audubon in like 1927, which we didn't know, like our incorporation are from 1946. But but the Great Depression and World War II kind of halted life in those times. So another group founded our current organization. So that's really, really cool that we've been uncovering that lately. We did play a major role in the history of Alabama's conservation movement. We assisted with the establishment of the Sipsey Wilderness and the Forever Wild Land Trust, just to name a few. And since hiring our first full-time staff member in 2013, we've grown to include 9 full-time, 1 part-time, and 2 seasonal staff positions. And we have offices in Birmingham, Greensboro, and on the coast. And in October of 2019, our membership met, and we voted to change our name to Alabama Audubon because it just made sense, to reflect our statewide reach.
So I'm really excited to have you as part of our interview series and to see your PowerPoint presentation, which is a first for this program. And we're going to learn a little bit more about Alabama Audubon and how you guys operate and some of your programs, as well as the specialty license plate you guys just created called Protect Our Birds. So you can take it away.
Alabama Audubon's mission is to promote conservation and a greater knowledge of birds, their habitats, and the natural world. So in short, we are all about Alabama's birds and bird lovers. And a lot of people may not realize we're actually the 4th most biodiverse state in the nation.
Wow.
We were known as the 5th, and then Scott Duncan, who works at Birmingham Southern, uncovered a lot of other species. So now we're the 4th most biodiverse. And we see over 400 species of birds in the state every year. So any bird lovers out there or conservationists, we would love to, if you would let us pay for your first year for this beautiful Protect Our Birds specialty license plate. It was designed by UAV Bloom Studio, and it features a red-shouldered hawk and longleaf pine, both native to Alabama. If we're able to get these into production with the state, then it will give us like sustainable income for years to come to help us with our conservation and outreach mission. So, but we do have to get 1,000 pre-commitments that the state requires. And luckily they let us extend to October 31st. And while that may sound like a lot of time, we have a lot of road to cover. So all you have to do is go to our website. If you want to see the full information, you go to alaudubon.org/tag, and we have FAQs out there. We have the picture so you can see it. If you go to alaudubon.org/sponsored-tag, then that's where we have a form that you can fill out, and basically that's how we can pay for it for you. You don't even have to get the tag. Like, we just have to get 1,000 VIN numbers essentially. So it's really just that simple. If you will fill that form out and email it to us, we would greatly appreciate it. It would help us get this awesome license tag into production. So thank you for letting me share about that. And now I'm just going to talk a little bit about our programs. So I know you were talking about like how things have changed since the pandemic, and it's just been, I mean, I'm working from home. A lot of us have been working from home since March of last year, and it's definitely changed a lot with our programs because we used to have a ton of outdoor, in-person events, and since like April of 2020, we've done all online programs, and I'm just gonna dive into that a little bit. I am going to talk about the former and the current and the future of things to come. So probably our biggest initiative is our Black Belt Birding Initiative. And you can see here, these are pictures from our 2019 Hill County Black Belt Birding Tour. In the top left, that's a Mississippi kite, which is one of the species you can go and see there in the summertime. It's brutally hot, but there's some amazing birds like scissor-tail flycatchers, swallow-tailed kites, painted buntings if you're lucky, which are like a rainbow bird, which I love. And then to the right of there, that's the Joe Farm. We took over 100 people to the Black Belt, and while that might not seem like a huge impact in, say, Birmingham, the Black Belt is one of the poorest regions in the country. And so we're working with partners like the Joe Farm, the Joe family, to bring birding ecotourism. And I mean, just think about the economic impact of bringing 125 people to Greensboro for a day, like there's local businesses there and restaurants and stuff. So it's about the birds, but it's also about the community. And in the bottom left, that's Dr. Drew Lanham, who was one of our special guests. He's on the right, standing with Cornelius Joe, who's the owner of the Joe Farm. And so Dr. Drew Lanham, many people listening to this may or may not know about him, but he is a very well-known conservationist, birder, and also author. He has some beautiful poetry and prose out there, so check it out. And I'll just keep going right along. So yeah, we now essentially have only had online programs since April of last year, which has been really hard because, like, how do you keep engaging people and teaching them about birds and the natural world? And so it's actually, Zoom has been huge for us because we've been able to offer many free and some paid courses. Here's an example of like Henry Hughes is really well known through like Friends of Shades Creek and other organizations. He is currently teaching a class on native tree ID with us. It's a 6-week class that's going on right now. Timothy Joe of the Joe family that I was just talking about, he teaches some online bird like journaling courses with us.
Oh, wow.
So that's an example to the right there. Meg, our Black Belt coordinator, is holding one of his journals. And we had all different kinds of courses on birds, whether it was about window collisions or, which is actually the second leading cause of death of birds, a lot of people don't know, and things you can do at home, to Ann Miller, the founder of the Alabama Wildlife Center, who's a really active member on our faculty. She taught courses on owls, and she's taught some about eBird and things like that. So we have many coming up. You can check them out on our website as well. And we do have to require registration, so we can send the Zoom info and all that good stuff. But we are starting back. We just announced, I think it was last week, we are starting to have some limited in-person field trips, keeping it to like 2 groups of 15, and you do have to register. We're giving preference to members, which you can become a member for just $20 a year. It's really cheap. And
oh, wow.
Supports our mission. Yeah. So this next slide also is about our Audubon Talks, which some of these are pre-pandemic, obviously. But like in the top right, we had Molly Adams, who founded the Feminist Bird Club here last March. That was our last in-person event before everything shut down, like a week before. In the top left, that's Jennifer Ackerman, who wrote a great book on, or she's written many, but the one here featured here was called The Genius of Birds. Fascinating. Oh my God, it blew my mind. And then since going all online, we've started having online Audubon Talks. So we had one in the fall that's prominently featured here in the center that was called Blackbirders in the Deep South. And we had a panel of really well-known, either local and national blackbirders, including Christian Cooper, who was infamously known for the incident, the unfortunate incident that happened in Central Park. But we also had Dr. Rashida Fareed, who is a professor at Tuskegee. We had Christopher Joe at the Joe Farm, our partner. We had Dr. Drew Lanham, and we also had Karina Newsom, who now works at our sister chapter at Georgia Audubon. But she's really well known for helping organize the Black Birders Week last year. What is time in a pandemic?
I
don't
agree.
say it anymore. And then lastly, I did want to give a quick plug. We have a free online spring Audubon Talk on Earth Day this year. It's Birds, Coast, and Climate. And we have another amazing panel of people that are going to be on that discussion. Several people throughout the Gulf Coast, so they can talk about all things related to birds and the coast and climate, and it's really exciting. And then we've been able to start recording some of our programs too, and I started as a Vimeo page. So if you go to vimeo.com/AL Audubon, you can see a lot of our recordings too. Like we have Ben Rains, who's really well known in the state. He did our winter Audubon talk, and that was possibly the most inspirational talk I've ever heard. It's amazing. And you can just go out and watch it now. So we have lots of online programming that you can now go on our Vimeo page and watch as well. And there are links to that on our website. And just tell me if I'm going too fast. There's so much.
Oh, no, you're fine. This is fascinating. I'm totally going to become a member. $20. That's amazing.
And the cool thing is, we try to give our members benefits when we can. Like right now, since we're opening up the field trips, for instance, limited, socially distanced, wear a mask, all that good stuff. But since it's just 2 groups of 15 each, we give members first dibs. So there are some.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and I want to learn more about birds. So this is fabulous. I love it.
This is some examples, or these are examples from prior to the pandemic, and we look forward to resuming these kind of programs in the near future when it's safe to do so. We had on the left, that's an example of one of our field trips. We would take field trips all over the state to different kinds of habitat. This one was in Opelika, I think. That was at the Wood Duck Preserve. I mean, what's been really cool to me is that I knew Alabama had a lot of amazing wild spaces, but I didn't realize how many and how diverse. Like I have gone to so many different corners of this state at this point, even during the pandemic. Like that's been sort of my refuge, is like going and exploring all the natural spaces. In the top right here, that's Moss Rock Preserve, which a lot of people are probably familiar with in the Birmingham area. It's in Hoover. And that was when we had our Goss Nature Walk series, which the field trips were more like a Saturday, either half day or all day kind of thing. And then the Goss Nature Walks were like little bite-sized nature outings around lunchtime on a Friday, So it was nice for people who couldn't maybe commit a whole Saturday to a field trip, but you could still take like a lunchtime nature break. And in the bottom right, that's our executive director, Ansel Payne, when we had a Goss Nature Walk at the Birmingham Art Museum. So that was really cool. He did some birds and art history. And so programs are one side. The other side, that we really focus on is conservation, obviously. And a big part of that, since 2017, we've had a coastal bird stewardship program focusing on predominantly 11 species of concern that have been heavily impacted by loss of habitat, depredation, obviously climate change, and coastal development, those sorts of things. Many of these birds, like the least terns, snowy plovers, and black skimmers, and even American oyster catchers, all that line of birds on the top there, their nests are essentially just scrapes in the sand. And you can see in the bottom right corner, their eggs are very well camouflaged. So it's really hard for them to have nests like that when there are humans everywhere, or playing volleyball and destroying nests. Y'all may remember that story from a few years ago. That was my first week on the job. We had a story blow up that Ben Rains actually wrote for AL.com about hundreds of baby birds dead because of beachgoers, off the coast of Alabama. And I was like, oh, wow. So people, but people don't know. We're not here to bash them. We're here to educate everyone. And so if you're aware, we have, staff, and we have volunteers on the coast that will set up scopes so you can, see. They'll try to like rope off areas if they've found nests, for instance, because these birds, their reproduction rate is not very good. And it's not just from humans, it's also from coyotes and things like that eating their eggs, unfortunately. So we have done a lot of work on the coast for the last 3 years with that program. And it's kind of like two big areas of our focus on the coast. So that the last one, the coastal bird stewardship, is during breeding season. And then the other 3 seasons of the year, we do Audubon coastal bird surveys, which other Audubon chapters with National Audubon across the Gulf Coast also have participated in these for many years since the BP oil spill. And so this has sort of been in response to that. And for many years, we had funding through that program, as we mentioned here on the slide. But so we have lots of committed volunteers. I think they go to at least 18 different sites between Mobile and Baldwin counties. There may be more now, but these are all the different spots where they've seen like different birds that we're trying to keep an eye on. So lots of really critical work happening even on the Gulf Coast. And since we brought on our Science and Conservation Director, Dr. Leanne Kozier, that's her on the right here, we have started doing more bird banding. Prior to the pandemic, we used to do, at least 3 years in a row, we had re-implemented a coastal bird banding that was like open to the public. In 2019, that was my first year to go, and it was amazing. But like over 500 people came through there. It was at Fort Morgan, because if you think about it, these birds will fly across the Gulf of Mexico, and Dauphin Island and Fort Morgan and that area are like their first landing place. So we would work with guest researchers and set up nets, and they would capture the birds and put a uniquely identifying band on their leg, as you see here, to help scientists understand, changes in whether it's due to climate change or whatever, habitat, where these birds are going and what their life cycles are like. And then this was sort of spurred off of that. Leanne has started banning American oyster catchers. We've also banned some snowy plovers, and she's getting licenses to do other birds specifically, but we just didn't know much about American oyster catchers on the Gulf Coast. And now, because we've been able to ban, in 2019, we banded some chicks, and then we made history just like a month or 2 ago for banning the first adult American oyster catcher in Alabama. And
wow.
Yeah, now we'll be able to track them. And if people ever see birds with bird bands out, like, you can report your sightings to us or to the bird banding laboratory. And that will help researchers.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, all over. I think I'm trying to remember what American oyster catchers, their nickname is like carrot smokers, because their bill is really cute. And then now Leanne has also started heron monitoring. Last year we rolled out a program focused on green herons, which is what you see here. And in this specific case, where these pictures were taken, this was at the Birmingham Zoo, and we have a partnership with them, and we work together on many different initiatives, but some of their zookeepers had seen green herons nesting at the zoo and called us out and worked with us to go out and ban them as well, so we can track them. This year, Leanne we just announced she's also added yellow-crowned night herons to this program, and this is actually a community science program where community science is based on, anyone in the community can be a part of it. You don't have to be a scientist. So you can go to our website, alaudubon.org/herons, and learn more about this program. But basically, if you spot a green heron or a yellow-crowned night heron anywhere in the state, you can log your sightings, and that will help us. And we're especially looking for volunteers who would be willing to monitor nests. if you find a nest like on your property or at a park. I think green herons, like I said, some nested at the zoo. Some have been known to nest on the island in Avondale Park, right there by your library.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they did some there last year. And the yellow-crowned night herons, I think we've heard of them nesting at like Eastlake Park. So they're all over Birmingham and the state. They're generally known to nest around water. But that's another way that people can get involved with us. And
I'll be on the lookout.
Yeah. One of my favorite birds, and this is another big conservation initiative for us, but also community science oriented, is the Chimney Swift. So as you'll see, I'm wearing a Chimney Swift shirt from Bird Collective, which they are a small business based out of Brooklyn, and they partner with different bird conservation nonprofits to help them do outreach and have really cool gear. But basically, they'll donate a portion of proceeds to us with their Audubon line. So they've got a whole Alabama Audubon line with birds found in our state. So you could check them out. But yeah, Chimney Swifts are like a little flying cigar with wings. They're adorable. I just started hearing them again. Like they just came back. They go they overwinter around the headwaters of the Amazon River. And so they'll fly all the way here sometimes we see them as early as like mid-March, but usually beginning of April is when we'll start to see them. And then some stay here and breed, and then some will go up all the way up the East Coast into Canada. And then when they're coming back in the fall, that's what this GIF is, if that's working on your screen. I hope it is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That is a swift nado. And so it's like a tornado of birds. And this happens, we usually start seeing it around August, especially. And we used to have Swift Nights Out. That was a really popular program that we would do because it's truly a natural phenomena. I mean, it's just miraculous to watch these birds as they enter the chimney at night. I mean, it'll be like, you'll see some, as the sun's starting to go down, but like once it really starts going down, they just come out of nowhere and start circling around, and then it's like they'll just start dropping in. It's really, really fascinating. And you can join our Alabama Swift Watch and monitor Chimney Swifts throughout the state as well. So that's another community science program we have.
Awesome.
We have been erecting these Chimney Swift towers up throughout the state too. And we just got a couple put up at Putnam Middle School, where we've done a lot of habitat restoration, and we established what we're now calling the Audubon Downtown Forest Preserve at this inner city school. It's like off of Montclair Road. And so it's like surrounded by strip malls and stuff, but there's this old growth forest behind there. And so we started working with the school and our partners there, like Jones Valley Teaching Farm and Desert Island Supply Company, and removing invasive species and restoring the habitat. And now we have 2 Chimney Swift towers there, which just went up this week. It's really exciting. But these are standalone towers. They're basically breeding towers, because usually a small tower like this isn't going to fit a ton of Chimney Swifts. And in the breeding season, it's usually just like 1 pair per tower. But in the fall, as you saw, like there's huge old chimneys in downtown Birmingham and all throughout the state where you can see up to 2,000 birds. I mean, possibly even more. I've seen upwards of 2,500 at some of these giant old incinerator type chimneys. But the problem is we're losing a lot of those chimneys, right, during over the last few years because of revitalizing the city. They demolish these old buildings, and then there goes that habitat. And so we're trying to raise awareness so that hopefully more and more businesses will not do that and at least leave the big chimneys, and do whatever around it, just leave that. But a lot of people cap their chimneys, so it's not just these big commercial chimneys. Like they could also roost in your personal home chimney, and a lot of newer structures just don't have those. So trying to build as many of these as we can and spread awareness. Oh, here's the Audubon Talks Forest Preserve I was just talking about. So that's Claire Datnow in the picture. She was a teacher at the school in the 90s, and she and her students built an outdoor classroom. So that's one more connection that we have there. She's a member of ours, and we had, I guess it was like 2017, I think, when our executive director, Ansel, was actually in my role as outreach director. And he was working with the school to like do some habitat restoration. And then we got involved with Claire and found out she was actually the one that established the outdoor classroom there. And so now we have this native prairie habitat with a bunch of native plants. We installed this split rail fence so that students can go out there and have this beautiful wild space. And like, it also helps the birds, you know, at the same time, of course, like it's creating more habitat for them. And there's some pictures of the wildflowers. And then one last little thing, we do a couple different kinds of grants. We offer Walter Cox research grants, and the annual deadline for those are, it's December 15th, and we offer up to $2,500 for graduate students, or, you know, you don't necessarily have to be a graduate student, but anyone who's doing conservation related work in Alabama. Of course, we give priority to bird related projects, like here on the left. Rebecca Bracken was studying, I think this is a ruby crown kinglet, and doing some bird banding initiatives. But, you know, we funded some like studying birds in the black belt, things like that. So that's one kind of grant that we do. And then we also, on the right here, do education mini grants, which teachers and educational nonprofits can apply for, and you can get up to $1,000 for whether it's like habitat improvement or like binoculars and field guides for students. On the top, that's at Putnam Middle School at that outdoor classroom I was talking about. We had, that's how the partnership began. We funded for them to get binoculars and field guides for their students. And then in the bottom right, that is purple martin habitat that Jones Valley Teaching Farm at Avondale Elementary School got. I think that was in 2017 or 2018. So lots of great stuff.
I've never seen one of those. Like, I've seen those things, you know, and
oh yeah, it looks like gourds.
But I never knew what it was. Like, yeah. I thought it was some sort of like weather thing, or, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because birds are really particular about the kinds of houses, and like you can go to nestwatch.org and find all kinds of blueprints on how to build your own nest boxes, and like
cool.
Birds need a specific size hole for the opening, whereas another bird might, like a wood duck box, needs a bigger one, and it's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned, you can become a member, just $20 a year. You can join our community science programs, and please, please, please sign up for our special license plate. We will pay for it, and you don't even have to get it, but you can help us reach that 1,000 pre-commitment. I think we're at a little over 300 right now, maybe 320. So we got a lot of ground to cover.
Well, thank you for that awesome presentation. That I learned a lot of awesome new things. I like to use the word awesome. So this might be an obvious question, or, you know, obvious answer to this question, but what is the importance of bird conservation, and how can the everyday viewer protect their birds in their community?
I'm really glad you bring that up, because the majority of people who might not be tapped into the conservation world think, you know, they go outside, they hear birds, they see birds, they think all is fine. But the truth is, the journal Science actually put out an article, I think it was in 2019. You can Google it, but it's just Science article about birds. And they had all this data that we've actually lost 3 billion birds since 1970. And that's a lot. But so, you know, there's never been a more important time to protect our birds, which is why we are very driven in that conservation mission. And there are things that people can do all throughout Alabama and throughout the world, really, to help birds. They may not realize it, but like the #1 killer of birds is outdoor cats. And so, you know, keeping cats indoors or even building a catio so they feel like they're going outside. That's a great way, or putting them on a leash, you know, whatever. And then window collisions are the second leading cause of bird death. So we actually have a whole page on our website with a wealth of information, even a video from our recent online course that you can watch. And it's just tips on how to make your windows at home or at your office bird friendly. And a lot of people will often think, oh, it's just those high-rise buildings, but actually the majority of window collisions happen within like 2-story or less buildings. So there's a rule you can follow. It's called the 2x4 rule, where you basically apply something to the outside of the window that is like 2 inches by 4 inches, or even 2 inches by 2 inches. Like if the amount of room that a bird could fly through, they don't see glass. So, you know, and a lot of people will oftentimes they'll find a window collision victim. And I'll see people post it on Facebook all the time, and they'll just be like, oh, it just let me hold it in my hand. Well, you actually need to get that bird to a licensed wildlife rehabilitator as soon as possible. And we have a lot of tips out there, like I said, but you can put it in a paper bag with some, you know, like pine straw or something. Don't give it food or water. It can drown or aspirate. And then get it to, you know, the Avondale Wildlife Center if you're in the Birmingham area. They are a great partner of ours. They do a lot of bird rehabilitation. They're out at Oak Mountain State Park. You can give them a call. You have to leave them a voicemail, but then they call you back. And typically you can take the injured bird within, they have a lot of resources on their website too for what to do with that.
Awesome. And you, thank you for having so much information on your website for people to, it's just like a step-by-step of like it sounds very well thought out. And so as part of the public, I appreciate that if I, you know, ever come upon this unfortunate, you know, event. So with the $3 billion, is that in the state of Alabama, or is that in the US, or?
America.
Okay. Wow. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And we learned this through like bird surveys. Like we have bird counts. We have our spring bird count coming up. And traditionally before COVID, you could like get together in a group and go out and you count as many birds as you can that day and log your sightings. But you can actually use your smartphone now and download the eBird app, or use their website and log your sightings there too. And then scientists from all over the world can study changes in population trends, and you can share your list with us. We're just all caps AL Audubon, and then you'll help us understand Alabama's birds better.
Did you become a bird lover after you worked with your organization, or has this been like a lifelong passion of yours?
A little bit of both. So since at least my early 20s probably was when I sort of had an awakening about, you know, learning about climate change and just ways to protect the environment. I became an environmentalist and a conservationist, and I always was fascinated by birds, but I didn't really consider myself like a bird watcher at that time. However, I am also an artist, and one of my favorite things to paint was birds. I was really mesmerized, especially by ravens. Which turns out corvids are like the world's smartest birds. So imagine that. But yeah, so I wasn't a birder until I started working for Alabama Audubon in 2018. And I knew that was going to be part of it. And like, I got myself a pair of binoculars and would go out with our longtime members. And I was like, well, I'm really interested. Like I learned it for the job, but then I found myself really loving it. And especially during the pandemic, like I used to only do it to like introduce other people. Like I learned it for the job, but I still loved it, but it was just different. And then like once the pandemic happened and I had countless hours of alone time and, you know, lots of anxiety and uncertainty in the world, like that was my respite, was to go out in nature and just take my binoculars. And it's a way of practicing mindfulness for me, just looking through binoculars at a bird, like nothing else in the world matters, you know?
No big deal. You're an actress yourself. And you have a YouTube show that you're in. Do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about that?
Sure. So I have always loved acting. In fact, when I was like 17 years old and I was in a musical, Little Shop of Horrors in high school,
Yes.
I was like, I want to be on Broadway, which wasn't realistic, but I love that creative outlet as well. And in I guess it was late 2019, I heard of an audition at Hoover Public Library, and it was for this Lovecraftian comedy that was going to be shot in the style of The Office called The Cultist. And first off, I love The Office. I didn't actually know that much about H.P. Lovecraft, but if you're a fan or if you just like irreverent comedy, then please check out The Cultist. It's a lot of fun. So we shot season 1 in like January of 2020, so before the pandemic, and then they debuted it live on YouTube. You can either just search YouTube for The Cultists or go to Heath Robinson's channel. He's the producer, and you'll find it there. They're all like really short episodes. They're like 5 to 8 minutes long. It's not for everyone, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's a great crew, and mostly Alabama crew, and shot in Alabama. And we just filmed season 2. We had I was a little nervous, with the pandemic, but they had a lot of different protocols in place, and I felt very comfortable. And so season 2 should come out sometime this year. I don't know when, but I got to film that recently, so that was a lot of fun.
I personally enjoyed it. I haven't seen all of the episodes yet, but I like that it's kind of dry, like The Office, or at least I think it's a little dry, but that's my favorite kind of humor. So, I mean, it might have a niche audience, who knows, but I think it's very good. So, and I'm sure it's just exciting to be a part of something creative with people and to just laugh. Especially now when everything is so, intense in the world. Do you have any favorite authors or like any favorite filmmakers that like maybe have inspired your life or that you're currently like getting into?
When I thought about it, 2 books came to mind especially that have really influenced my life. And the first one I read in probably my mid-20s, it's called Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. And it's a book that is from the perspective of a gorilla. And it basically covers all of human history through the eyes of a gorilla. So it was very eye-opening about the impact that we have on animals and on nature, which set me on that course, right? And then Michael Singer has a book called The Untethered Soul, which is a very spiritual book. And it really changed my life in my 30s. And then right now, so we're talking about, so also movies. Just like in the last few months, I watched My Octopus Teacher on Netflix. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't heard of it.
I highly recommend everyone watch My Octopus Teacher. It will change your life. There's no way it cannot. It's beautiful. It's a man who was like going and diving and would take a camera underwater and developed a relationship with this octopus, and it will blow your mind.
Oh, wow.
When it comes to other things though, I mean, I loved like 80s movies, like classics, like Bride was one of my all-time favorites. And then as far as like what I'm reading right now, I'm still, I've been picking it up and putting it down for some time, but I'm reading Ani DeFranco's memoir, No Walls and the Recurring Dream. She's a very powerful influence on my life to her music. She's a musician and started her own music company called Righteous Babe Records in the 90s.
Yeah. I haven't heard her name in like forever, but she was a huge influence to like me and a bunch of my friends in the 90s. And I had an older brother that was like living in LA and, giving me like all kinds of, thank you, Joseph, if you're out there watching. Say thank you, Sarah, for, joining me today and spending some time and telling us about birds and the Alabama Audubon. Amazing work that you're doing, and I think anybody who's watching this video has also learned a lot. Are there any last words that you would like to share before we peace on out?
Protect our birds and
yes.
live long and prosper. I don't know. I hope everyone is well out there. Take care of yourself. Self-care is hugely important.
It is. I agree. Well, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see you sometime soon. Let us know here at the library if we can do anything to help y'all. And thank you again.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye.